This is the Content Discovery for Movies panel. Hope all of you had a safe trip out here. I'm going to introduce to you each of our panelists here and let them speak a little bit about the company that they're here representing. The first one, my name is Aaron Henry. I've been doing public relations consulting in this area for the last 14 years or so, and worked with a number of people here, or the companies that they're with during that time. First, on my left, is Bruce Eisen. Bruce is the VP of Online Content Development and Strategy for Dish Network. So, Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about Dish, which I'm sure all of you are already familiar with if you're not subscribers?
Sure. Good morning. Dish is a pay TV provider, the third largest in the country. We use satellites. The reason I'm here is the other thing that we have is dishonline.com and related apps, which is our entertainment portal. You can go there and watch movies and TV shows full length. If you're not a Dish sub, there's actually a lot that you can watch. If you are a Dish sub, there's even more that you can watch. It's the TV Everywhere authenticated content. So if you're a Dish sub who subscribes to HBO, you can watch Boardwalk Empire to your heart's content. And similar, we can set your DVR remotely from the site and rent movies to your set-top box. We also have a full range of content on demand that goes across devices, so the set-top box and Dish Online and the apps and so forth, including 2 different SVOD subscription video on demand products, a movie offering and a kids and family offering that, again, all that's available on a cross-platform basis. And of course, some linear TV shows and movies that come into your TV via the satellites. So that's what we're doing.
To Bruce's left, Steve Polsky is the general manager of Flixster, which was acquired last year by Warner Brothers.
Thanks, Aaron. So, hi, Steve Polsky, and I'll just mention a couple things. So, the general manager of Flixster, but Flixster and Rotten Tomatoes are really 2 entities. I think, I don't know how many of you are familiar with both of those properties, but over the last year and a half, there's been some changes, which I think relevant to this panel, being as part of Warner Brothers. With Flixster in particular, we're really pushing forward on movie discovery, movie ownership, and kind of cloud-based movies, pushing forward the ultraviolet standard around movies, which I think is one topic that'll be kind of interwoven in some of the things we're talking about today. And of course, Rotten Tomatoes, our goal is to be the leading critics' consensus brand in the movies category, helping people discover and make decisions about movies wherever they are.
We are actually the leading brand.
There you go.
So.
Right.
To Steve's left, Brian Walsh is the manager of Digital and On-Demand of the Digital and On-Demand team for Lionsgate.
Thanks, Brian Walsh. Lionsgate is the leading independent, forward-thinking movie studio, although it's been mentioned recently that maybe we're one of the majors now with our recent acquisition of Summit and the Hunger Games franchise, so we're really lucky to have some big projects to move out with. But at the same time, Lionsgate kind of started as a very small film company, and they still kind of subscribe to that in a lot of business aspects.
Great. And then to Brian's left, John Zelenka is the EVP of Revenue for Digital Smiths.
Hi, everybody. For those who aren't familiar with Digital Smiths, we license a set of video discovery technologies, and we believe that those technologies are really addressing a fundamentally pretty big problem in the space. And it's that it's very hard to discover content that you want to see. So we believe that the consumer should really have content presented to them as opposed to having to go out and find the content. So we license a set of discovery technologies to that end. It includes a rich metadata framework, integrated search and recommendations technologies, various social tools, a business rules engine, and this is all delivered through a set of open APIs that we deliver to MSOs, consumer electronics companies, and then the major online services. So we license the technology platform as they develop their UIs to try to always be increasing the personalization and the relevance of their services as folks are trying to discover movie and TV content.
Okay, great. So this is how I'm going to organize this panel. I'm going to direct a question specifically to one of the panelists. and give them an opportunity to answer, and then we can pass the baton to one of the other panelists and do some follow-up or move on to the next question. Most of the questions are specifically around movie content discovery, but also obviously there's a sort of broader field here where we're talking about content in general that's distributed digitally and the strategies that go into marketing it. So I'm going to start with Brian. Brian, is the way that consumers are searching for and consuming entertainment fundamentally changing the type of entertainment in which they're interested? And my follow-up to that would be, is there a future for 2-hour movies as we know them?
I don't think fundamentally anything's changing about the content people are seeking out. I still think that the 2-hour movie is the best format for people to process and watch films in. I think that between attention spans and the length of time people dedicate to entertainment, I think the 2-hour feature is still ideal for that. And for that reason, we think that people are actually seeking out a lot more library content. With the help of some of these content discovery guys, we think that whereas we saw library companies kind of take a dip with the DVD boom ending, we think that content discovery is going to be the next big wave for library content to ride its value. And we really think some of the deeper library assets that we have will be discovered and will be raised up so that people can find new films that they would like. And so the new technology isn't really changing the way people watch as much as the length of time that material is good on the shelf, because we really think that there'll be a long tail aspect of the new technology.
Okay, good. Does anyone have anything to add to that? No. All right. Let me ask you this though: as a follow-up, is Lionsgate deriving more revenue from the various distribution models that you're doing now than versus the traditional sort of ancillary windows?
No, the traditional ancillary windows are still definitely, DVD and selling rights to cable and those other traditional ancillary markets are still providing the bulk of our revenue on a title, after theatrical, obviously. But we're seeing huge growth in places like VOD and SVOD sales, which is subscription video on demand, such as your Hulu Plus, your Netflix. So we're seeing huge growth opportunities in those areas where before you'd have some titles that if they've been out of the market for 15 or 20 years, they would traditionally be gone because people would only access them either on a television screen or if they happen to find the DVD at a store. Whereas now, with the content discovery of something like Flixster or Netflix, where people can search and they can find related titles, it makes it that much easier for people just to click and decide, you know what, I do like Robert Downey, I'll watch this other movie of his, and there's less of a commitment than there used to be when you had to pay $5 or $10 at the DVD store to try to see if you liked that product. So there's real growth opportunities there, and it hasn't surpassed any of the, the traditional, waterfall structure as far as how we glean our revenue. But we really think that there's a lot of opportunity for that moving forward.
Okay, good. I'm gonna direct this question to Bruce, but Bruce, if you want to open it up to the group, also we could turn it into a sort of group response. As companies like Google and YouTube are beginning to invest in original content. Is the content from these companies specializing in digital distribution going to threaten the studios and the networks that have traditionally produced and distributed movies and television programming?
Threaten? I don't know that I would use the word threaten. I don't know that it's not clear that they're actually producing it themselves, right? They're going to be hiring companies to do it. If you look at the TV networks, for instance, and Modern Family, I believe, it's on ABC, but it's produced by Fox. The studios produce all the TV content. I can easily imagine a scenario where, whether it's Google or Netflix or Hulu, commissioning original content, but being produced by companies whose forte is producing original content. But putting all that aside, even assuming that they don't go that route, currently, it's obviously a very small amount of content that's coming out of the digital distributors that we've just mentioned compared to what's being done in the movie world and the traditional TV world. That'll obviously grow, but I don't think it would threaten the studios and the networks.
Okay. Actually, jumping off that, even the studios, and I can cite Warner Brothers, Aim High, for example, are moving into some original content for social platforms. For example, Aim High, which was introduced on Facebook. So, Steve, my question for you would be, are there some legitimate revenue models existing right now to be built around this original content that's distributed primarily on social platforms, or do you think we're still in a very experimental stage?
I mean, to be honest, I think we're still in an experimental stage. I mean, look, I think broadly speaking, it'll be interesting to see how like the whole over-the-top market matures. Right? Clearly, like Netflix has created demand to go direct to consumers, but it's going to be interesting to see if other people can create enough demand to go directly to consumers. And I think from a content perspective, it is still very experimental. I think that's Warner Brothers likes to be on the forefront, likes to experiment, so really wants to understand how you can launch a series, how you can gain traction for it. It's going to be really interesting to see if people can build, sustainable models of just producing content to attract an audience first. And I think, of course, once you attract the audience, then you have to create the revenue model around it to pay for the whole series. Yeah. So I think it's still early days.
Isn't that one of the issues, attracting the audience, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think of the movies and the major TV networks, they spend a good amount of money to attract the audience. How is that done with the over-the-top guys?
Right.
I think that's something that'll be interesting to watch and see how that plays out.
I agree.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting if these experimental over-the-top is just a seed format, like let me see if I can create a series, let me see if I can create some compelling characters that then just migrate up the chain, get picked up by major networks and become just general productions. Yeah.
It's a very expensive development process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But actually, then I'll turn this question to John. So, John, if you were called upon, jumping off this whole thought, to create an ideal model for digital movie distribution in combination with marketing, what would that look like? Would it involve syndication? Would it be subscription versus pay-per-view, search, user recommendations? What do you think the most important criteria are in terms of making sure that your content is found?
Yeah, I think there's clearly people on the panel that are probably better equipped from a content provider and a distributor perspective to answer some of the marketing questions. But I think from a consumer experience and a discovery point of view, we do see a lot of interesting data points in the marketplace that really point to the importance of personalization and relevance in movie discovery, for example. So we recently did a consumer survey of 2,000 plus U.S. and Canadian pay TV customers. And this is actually was reflected also in some secondary research that I saw. 78% of them said that they rented or engaged in zero VOD transactions in the past month. And yet 46% of them also said that they belonged to at least one of the subscription rental services like a Netflix or a Vudu or an Amazon, and each one of them had rented at least one movie or viewed a movie in the past month. And so what I think it points to is really a couple of things. I think, first of all, it does seem that the subscription model definitely has some legs. One of the reasons that they said that they were gravitating toward those services a bit was that it's easier to find the content, it's cheaper, there's a better selection. Generally, those were three of the main criteria. So it seems like they are gravitating a bit to the subscription model, and then secondarily, definitely gravitating to where they think it's easier to find content. We're lowering some of the barriers for them to get to what they actually want to watch. I think 75% of Netflix views actually come via a recommendation of some kind. And so, you're kind of entering that paradigm and that system based on a high level of personalization and relevance to you. So I think that's reflected. I mean, if I had to focus on two things, I think subscription is definitely emerging, and I also think that, personalizing the experience for the individual is very important.
Okay, good. I'm actually going to skip then to Steve here because John just cited that the information that I got, it was actually MediaPost that cited a study with 75% of Netflix views stemming from user recommendations. Steve, my question for you would be, as a distribution channel for UV, what are some other strategies that Flixster is using to drive viewership of the content that is being pushed through by the studios?
Sure, kind of to add on to your comments. I mean, we're putting a lot of energy into designing tools and designing experiences for people to discover movies, right? And I think like we're really trying to leverage the different assets that we have. So to give you an example, you know, Flixster is kind of the #1 mobile utility used in theatrical window to decide what movies you want to see, right? It's a very, you know, what's playing near me. There's a lot of information that comes off of that. And I know even myself personally, there's a lot of movies that I want to see that I don't get a chance to see in the theatrical window, and that my mind are kind of lost in my movie world. I may see them on Dish sometime down the road. I may, you know, it may appear some other time, but I lose it. And actually kind of tracking that information and bringing it back to you at the right time when it's available in different windows, I think will create more and more demand for movies. So that's one, just, you know, personalize, like, your ability to manage your movie's world. What do I want to see? What's available? When can I see it? Is one of the things we're experimenting on. The other thing, you know, we just launched new tools to help people find content that you want to see. So in a world where you can get content on all different sources and all, you know, SVOD, you know, subscription, just purchase, all that, like, how do you decide what you want to see and where you want to see it? And kind of that, you know, using the Rotten Tomatoes scores, and also in Flixster creating experiences where you can discover movies from your personal preferences, from your friends' recommendations, just lots of ways to discover what you want to see. So, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to cite a couple of other figures here. An article in Video News said that 50% of pay TV subscribers are using over-the-top services versus 22% using paid video on demand. An ABI research report says 20% of users consider online video a replacement for monthly subscription services. So, Bruce, my question for you would be, and I know there's an online component to Dish, but as a cable provider, how are you adapting to, preparing to respond to these changes in viewership?
Well, I disagree with those numbers. I mean, what was the second one? 22% look at over-the-top as a replacement for pay TV?
It said 20% of users were considering online video a replacement for monthly subscription.
Well, it certainly has not been the case that, as an industry, the pay TV industry has lost 20% of its subs.
Right.
So they may be thinking about it. There's a lot of things I think about. But in any event, that's besides the point. To answer your question, what Dish is doing, and in fact I would say the whole pay TV industry, is really looking at the so-called TV Everywhere offering, which is once you're a pay TV subscriber, you have on-demand access, and going forward even linear access to, you know, just a plethora of content, movies and TV shows, where you want, when you want, on all different devices. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I think it's actually a very compelling offer. In that, you know, lying in bed on your iPad or wherever it is, you can watch all this content. The SVOD services, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or any of the others, they're all good services. But, you know, by definition, they're very limited in what they can offer. And the definition, of course, is especially on the movie side, just the window, the way Hollywood has the window set up. If you look at Dish has a movie SVOD offering that's only available to Dish subs. We have movies from Paramount and Lionsgate available in a SVOD window prior to anybody else, or certainly no later than anyone else. And that's as a result of the deal that we did with Epix, which has the Paramount and Lionsgate and MGM films. Right, so we're able to get that content in the pay TV window, which is prior to the standard SVOD window. Now, Amazon and Netflix have it as well. But just to give you an example of things that we're doing to, to augment and react and compete with the different SVOD offerings. In our movie offering, we have content from a number of other TV networks as well that aren't readily available in our competition. So as an industry, I think we're all taking a number of different steps that benefit the consumer, again, to my mind, as a consumer, immensely, and without raising the price for it, right? Because the TV Everywhere content, so far, nobody is paying additional money for, which I think makes sense. So that's my answer.
John, you were about to add something.
Yeah, I would agree with Bruce. That consumer research that we did backs that up, that it was actually far fewer subscribers that were thinking of actively switching away and totally replacing their pay TV service. I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was more like single digits. It seemed to be more of a factor of revenue attrition, that perhaps the pay TV providers could be keeping and monetizing more on the VOD platform, as opposed to having half of these people go and rent at least one movie per month, or we have one view at one of the other services. But actually far fewer than we even thought on these respondents came back and said that they were thinking of completely cutting and switching and replacing the service.
Okay.
Well, just to jump in,
Yeah.
I mean, statistically speaking, if it's 25%, one of us should be a cord cutter up here, and I guess that would be me. I don't have cable. When I started getting into this space, I'm sorry. When I started getting into this space, I figured that the easiest way to kind of really figure it all out would be to just dive in and see can these services be a replacement? Can you go, without the ESPN, the Food Network, and all that stuff? And I found that I can't. My girlfriend, not so much. She is begging me every month to sign back up for cable, and we probably...
Smart woman, marry her.
We probably will. We probably will sign up. And so, but I found that the two biggest things that it's lacking are a specificity of content, where there are very particular brands and parts of entertainment that we've gotten used to, such as ESPN, such as Food Network, a lot of the Fox stuff that you can't get with any of these other over-the-top services. So I think, and then the second thing was also just the randomness of it. In an on-demand world, you always have to know exactly what you're going to watch, when you're going to watch it, and so there's no one that you just flip on the TV and something's just playing. And a lot of times after a long day of work, you just want to go home and have someone else tell you what's on and what's playing. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths that the MPVD providers give people. And so I think that at first glance, it feels like those services can be a replacement, because you say, hey, they have content and they have content, they must be the same, and one's a much lower price point. But there's a lot of entertainment, the ecosystem that we've gotten used to by the MPVD providers that I think we take for granted. And then once you actually do cut, you realize, oh yeah, I do miss some of that stuff. I do want to go back and have the DVR and the guide and all this kind of stuff.
Are you having trouble? It's interesting you say that, because I was actually thinking of giving up my cable myself. But are you having trouble finding specific programming that you become attached to? Like Walking Dead, for example. Tough to find if you're going to...
Yeah, I mean, it's available. Unlike Amazon Instant Video has a lot of the stuff. But, once you get to a certain point where if you're loyal to a bunch of these television brands, you're going to start getting at the cost of your cable subscription if you're buying it all. If you have a subscription and you say, well, I like Walking Dead and I like Breaking Bad and I have to watch Mad Men and I have to watch Nurse Jackie, and now I'm just rattling off Lionsgate shows. But if you're going to be watching all those, then you're going to be spending $60, $70 a month in buying the content. And there's still a lot that you're missing without cable. So I think it's a good experiment to try for a while, but I would keep the phone number of your cable company, because you'll probably want to call
Or
them.
satellite.
Or satellite, yeah, MPVD, we say.
John, okay, so let's talk about barriers to consumption then, because we're driving towards that question. How can we break down the silos that are barriers to consumption across all these various competing services?
Yeah, I think the silo issue is a significant one in terms of content discovery, especially. And so there are kind of silos that are not only created, among services, but also within services. So, if you look at pay TV, for example, they've been at a disadvantage for several years because they've had legacy equipment in the field, set-top boxes, things that have kind of limited, your ability to back channel and interact with the service. But that's changing. That's changing with second screens. It's changing with switches, to IP infrastructure and technologies like that. So I think the key is to breaking down the silos between the platforms. So if you look, typically content is presented to a consumer, I'm in my linear environment, or I'm in my VOD environment, or I'm on a consumer electronics environment where I have to choose among several apps, each of which has its own siloed experience. I think what's really lacked is a universal discovery experience for consumers. Just from a purely consumer point of view, I think what needs to happen is you need to present a consumer what's most personal, what's most relevant to them, irrespective of the platform that's available to them at that given point in time. So they need to be presented the fact that this is the show that I'm most likely to enjoy right now, or this is the movie that I'm most likely to rent, whether or not that's on linear television, whether or not it's on the VOD tier, or if it's through some over-the-top service. And I think that's what's lacked. We have grown accustomed to presenting the consumer information based on the ways that it's delivered to them, as opposed to the way that they actually want to consume it, which is, what am I going to enjoy right now? What most matches my tastes? And I think it's both, a problem that needs to be addressed, within individual services, as well as, in a unified search and discovery experience, like on a CE device, where you're just choosing from among multiple apps, and it's very hard to drill down in any one of those to really find what's most relevant to you at that point in time.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, I agree. I can only talk from personal experience, but in our house, my wife and I, we watch TV every night. And we've got the satellite box connected to the big screen, and we've got every, Amazon and Netflix and Hulu Plus, all going into the big screen TV via the Blu-ray player or some box. And all we watch is whatever's on the DVR. And even if there's stuff that on the DVR tonight that we don't really want to watch right now, and I know that there's plenty that we do want to watch on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon, but trying to find it, and changing the input, to this and that, and then waiting for it to start up, and waiting for the thing to stop turning, and then getting to that section, and then starting to watch it, and waiting for that thing again, and then, God forbid, you don't like what you're watching, and then take it all over. Compare that to the DVR, where it's just press, click, watch. Okay, don't like it, press, click, watch something else, go back to the first one. I mean, to me, it's just a huge barrier of entry, is
I agree.
not being able to get to what I want readily and easily.
I think, at the heart of it, we're all inherently lazy, especially when we're on the couch in front of the TV. And I think there really needs to be a lot of innovation amongst the connectivity of devices, right? So your tablet knows that your TV and your Blu-ray player have these capabilities. Your phone knows that you have access to these things, so that things are automatically connected. Just the number of remotes and gyrations you have to go through just to switch to a different medium of content is just, a big inhibitor.
Yeah, having your profile that survives on multiple devices, irrespective of whether you're in front of the television or you have your iPad, say, in a TV everywhere environment. I think it's really important. The key is consumers don't think that way. Consumers don't think, I'm going to view this because it's on linear television. It's been more pushed to them that way traditionally, through those paradigms. They're thinking about what's most interesting to me right now. And, if I know that consumer, I know the profile, it really shouldn't matter what platform the content is coming from. And, all that stuff can just be done and managed with technology and metadata. And you can create those experiences for consumers. You just kind of have to look on the outside in and think about, how do I actually want to experience content, not, what's being served to me in traditional ways.
Good. All right, I'm going to direct this question to Steve, but I think it'll end up being open up to the group. So how important do you think, as we move this content to social platforms, obviously it also opens up avenues to new methods of currency, like Xbox points or Facebook credits, or things that could replace pay-per-view, or even be driven by some sort of social media incentive. How important do you think that that's going to be in terms of the ecosystem of social media or social platform content?
I think I'm hoping that this year will be a year of a lot of experimentation in that area, right? That like, particularly we're hoping to be able to experiment. We're like basically launching the foundations of Ultraviolet. You can buy movies, you can get it anywhere, you can stream it anywhere. Now I'm hoping that working, with all the studios, we can innovate on pricing and packaging. So that includes like, can I share content with, people around me, right? Can I gift content to friends, right? Are there different mechanisms that will just reduce the friction of purchasing content, like Facebook credits or other means of payment? So, look, they're not going to replace payment, but I think they're a great way to, take advantage of social media to, like I said, reduce friction and just increase consumption of movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Brian, let's turn to distribution for a minute. So you've been, Lionsgate has lately been experimenting with digital day and date, theatrical and digital release. Your biggest growth right now, if I'm correct, is in VOD and digital. Mm-hmm. So what would you say the future role of theatrical releasing is in connecting with audiences? I mean, are we going to move purely to a day and date type pattern, or?
No, I don't think so, because I think that inherently people enjoy going out. I think that this conference, part of it is streamed online from what I understand, and still we have all these people in attendance because you like that human interaction. You like going out, whether it's on a date or with a group of friends to see a movie and reacting together with it. But that being said, I think that a lot of times catching up on the social conversation involves maybe an on-demand component. So there's a movie that everyone's been talking about. You want to watch it. You can't get to the theaters. If it's available at a premium on your over your cable or satellite provider.
Thank you.
There you go. I think a lot of people will and have taken advantage of that. We saw Margin Call and Arbitrage both perform huge because those are smaller, limited releases that maybe wouldn't get into the big multiplexes that are the nearest theaters for a lot of people. But when you bring it to their home and you say, this is something that's still in theaters, you can catch it now at what is a reduced price from 2 tickets, popcorn, candy, babysitter, parking, all that. You say, okay, that's a big value proposition for me. I still think that people are going to want to go to the theaters sometimes. So it's a matter of balancing that and finding which are the right properties and which aren't, because you don't want to eliminate some of the word of mouth that's generated by theatrical visits and by people enjoying going out and seeing a movie and being with their friends and like I said, reacting. You know when you come out of a movie theater whether that movie was good or bad based on what everyone's talking around you, and so that kind of helps drive conversation. But I still think that, like you said, VOD is a huge growth opportunity because it's something new that we haven't really had a chance to play around with before. So we see a lot of future in it.
Okay. We only have a few minutes left. I want to open up the panel to some outside questions, and we only have about 10 minutes left. So there's one other question I want to put out to everyone before we turn it to the audience for questions, which is this. Do you think as an industry we're doing enough to combat piracy? And I say that because, Brian, for example, when you were talking about cord cutting and where to get content, you can get it on Pirate Bay. So are people, do we have enough mechanisms that are going to be effective in place to stop a migration over to piracy? Are we going to be able to find some sort of medium that, like, for example, the record label industry that looks very different from what it did, pre-digital downloads for movies and television content?
Well, I work a good deal on anti-piracy at our company. I have to say that we have a very strong team that goes out very aggressively, especially protecting theatrical windows. But technological advances have actually made it easier to catch content as it propagates all throughout the life of a product. So whether it's just being released, we kind of have these set checkpoints wherever a product goes in the market between when it's pre-release to when it's released to 60 days post-release to home video, and then into the library windows, that we have these checkpoints where we say, okay, we need to make sure that we're watching it for these places, We'll allow a certain amount of content on YouTube along the way, because we know whether it's marketing or, clips that are going to go viral that fans are making. We want to allow a lot of give and take, but we want to prevent certain length of content from appearing. So we have a very strong legal team and tech team that goes out and search is not just YouTube, but every website that hosts, and that includes Pirate Bay. And we pursue all the legal remedies we can. I think that we need some new legislation that provides a little bit of muscle for the industry, because right now I think the DMCA was a good start, but it was written in 1998 initially, when YouTube was still almost 10 years away. So it's difficult to use that legislation when you're pursuing these anti-piracy goals. But the SOPA Act that was attempted a couple years ago, I think lost the PR battle from the beginning. I think that people initially saw that and just said, this is going to ruin the internet, and it's awful, and Hollywood's being really evil, protecting its content. But I think that instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that we really should have worked on refining that and coming up with a common sense solution that allows us to prevent people from stealing what is I think is one of our country's greatest exports, and kind of protecting some jobs here at home as a result of that.
Okay, good. Does anyone have any closing thoughts that you want to voice before I open up the floor to questions? All right, so we've got about 5 minutes here for questions. All I see out there is a blinding sea of light. So raise your hand if you have a question. Let us know who you want to direct it to. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, right there.
Thank you. This is kind of in general, and it touches on kind of different areas of each of your companies. What's the role of metadata in providing recommendations, and are you working with studios to provide a consistent markup on content, and how do you see that evolving the discovery of content and driving consumer recommendations?
I can jump in on that, definitely. So we provide, a technology layer that includes the search, the recommendations, all the things that help our customers basically design user experiences based on personalization and relevance around. But if you start with that layer, it's kind of like buying the second floor of a house but not having a foundation. So, in our opinion, metadata is extremely essential, and having a very powerful data framework that underlies all of that is essential to driving a recommendation engine, a good search experience, all of the above. And so we do definitely work with studios. Warner and Paramount are a couple of customers of ours. They license some of our technology to develop that very deep, rich index of metadata for many of their assets. But as important, you need to work with all the other third-party metadata that's out there and be able to build a very robust layer for each customer based on the metadata that's most important to them. And so being able to manage that, integrate it, unify it, and have it be a useful basis for search recommendations technology is key. It's kind of garbage in and garbage out. You can put the best engine on top of bad data, and you're going to get really bad results.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think to build metadata is the key to building a great experience, and the state of the world is still about cobbling together like all different sources of data, like normalizing it, matching IDs, and to create a great solution. I think then that's one of the key challenges of offering a great service. Yeah.
Okay, another question?
Hello.
I'm sorry, wait, am I missing someone? Oh, okay, there. Thanks.
I'm just wondering if you've seen the dial move at all with TV Everywhere, et cetera, on the DRM side. Is that still a sea of competing standards, or is something emerging?
What was the question?
DRM and TV Everywhere, right?
I'm sorry, once again?
Yeah.
Just basically, with all the different content delivery methods, has there been movement in terms of standardizing the rights management along with that, or is it still kind of the same situation you alluded to with metadata?
It's getting better. It's not 100%. There's a trade organization called the Entertainment Merchants Association. They're either in the middle of, or maybe they just have promulgated a spec two specs really, one for a mezzanine file format and one for metadata that a lot of the digital distributors have signed on to. So, that's taking place. Apple has not signed on to that, so that's always going to be a difference. Then in the pay TV world, Comcast, Dish, Direct, Time Warner Cable, each has their own little flavor, so that is still not 100%. But again, it's better than it was, and it will definitely get better, but we're not at the end of the road yet.
Okay, time for one more question.
You must have answered it all.
I'm sorry. That's. I think we addressed everything there was that could be asked. All right. Thank you, all of you, for coming here. I hope you have a great event, and we will, I guess, see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our panelists. We'll give them a round of applause.